is the only real temple that excavated in Judah, in Israel. And the unique thing is that this is a temple that was built during the time that, according to the Bible, Solomon built his temple, only 7 kilometers from here in Jerusalem.
For 5,000 years, the legendary secrets of King Solomon's fault remained buried, hidden from the world. But now, after centuries of mystery, the unthinkable has happened. The ancient seal has been broken. What's been discovered inside is more mind-blowing than anyone could have imagined. Could this be the key to unlocking untold treasures, or something far darker? The truth is more shocking than history ever anticipated.
The king of Jerusalem built a most highly skilled fortification that indicated it's a strong regime, centralized, with great abilities. But then we have this biblical story that tells about King Solomon doing the same thing.
The idea of Solomon's tomb has long been entangled with myth and legend, passed down through generations and woven into the stories of ancient cultures. From the Bible to the Quran, Solomon is remembered as a king of unparalleled wisdom, the builder of the first temple in Jerusalem, and the ruler of a kingdom that spanned the ancient world. However, unlike his famous temple, which has left a lasting imprint on history and the sacred texts, Solomon's tomb has remained elusive. No sarcophagus bearing his name has ever been uncovered. No monument has marked the site of his burial, and no physical evidence has emerged to confirm his final resting place.
When Eilat Mazar realized she discovered an ancient structure near Jerusalem, she turned to the Bible to help explain what she found.
And she learned that this new discovery supports the biblical accounts of King David and his son Solomon.
Breaking news, as a matter of fact, out of the city of David, ancient Jerusalem, one of my favorite places in all of Israel, yet another amazing archaeological discovery at the city of David.
For centuries, scholars and adventurers alike have speculated about where Solomon might have been buried. Some believe that his tomb was hidden directly beneath the Temple Mount, sealed away by the king himself. Others suggested it could lie deep within the secret caves of the Judean hills, concealed by ancient priests. Throughout history, there were various attempts to uncover the tomb, driven by both archaeological curiosity and religious devotion. However, most of these efforts ended in failure. Archaeologists and treasure hunters alike left Jerusalem empty-handed, their hopes dashed by the complexity of the city's ancient layers and the lack of clear clues. One of the earliest figures to tackle the mystery was William F. Albright, a prominent archaeologist of the early 20th century. Albright argued that Solomon's tomb, like many aspects of his reign, had passed from the realm of archaeology into the world of legend. For decades, the tomb was considered little more than a poetic story, embellishing the grandeur of a king whose true historical existence was debated. Even as more evidence emerged confirming the existence of Solomon as a historical figure, the quest to find his tomb seemed futile. Archaeology turned its attention to other ruins and more reachable ancient sites. Despite this widespread skepticism, the story of Solomon's tomb did not fade away. Even in modern times, the legend has continued to intrigue believers and historians alike. Some remain convinced that Solomon's final resting place is hidden beneath the city of Jerusalem, still waiting to be discovered. Over the past few decades, new archaeological findings have provided further clues about the wealth and power of Solomon's kingdom, reigniting interest in the search for his tomb. The discovery of ancient copper mines in Timna and the unearthing of artifacts that trace trade routes linking Africa, India, and Arabia to Israel suggest that the stories of Solomon's fleets and his vast empire may have been more than mere legend. These findings only deepen the mystery surrounding the king and his tomb. If Solomon's reign was truly as remarkable as the biblical and historical records suggest, then the tomb of such a legendary figure must exist somewhere, waiting to be found. But the search for Solomon's tomb remains elusive, with no definitive answers in sight. The question of where Solomon was buried continues to haunt historians, religious scholars, and archaeologists. Some believe it is buried deep within the sacred grounds of the Temple Mount, while others insist it lies in secret, hidden from the world's eyes for a reason that remains unknown. Solomon's final resting place has become a symbol of the great unanswered questions of history. For centuries, scholars have turned to the Bible, the Quran, and other ancient texts in search of clues, but these have offered only vague references. The Bible mentions Solomon's temple, but the question of where the king was buried remains strangely absent. The scarcity of details only adds to the allure of the mystery. For a king whose legacy stretches across three major world religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the absence of his burial site is a compelling paradox. Throughout history, numerous theories have emerged about where Solomon's tomb could be located. Some believed it was directly beneath the Temple Mount, sealed off from the world by divine will. Others suggested it lay hidden in the caves of the Judean hills or beneath Jerusalem's ancient streets, concealed by priests and builders to protect its treasures from invaders. One of the most popular theories came from medieval knights, who believed they could uncover a vault of sacred artifacts beneath the city. The idea of a hidden treasure, laden with gold and divine wisdom, has been an enduring element of the Solomon myth. In the 19th century, explorers ventured into the rocky slopes around the city of David, following half-understood documents and local legends. Despite their best efforts, they were met with disappointment. Time and again, the explorers returned with nothing but rubble and shattered hopes. The elusive tomb remained as much a part of legend as it had been in earlier centuries. Even as the field of archaeology advanced, the search for Solomon's tomb seemed increasingly unrealistic. To many, it became little more than a romantic notion, with no firm basis in historical fact. Yet, the mystery of Solomon's tomb has not been entirely forgotten. Despite the academic skepticism surrounding it, there are those who still believe that the tomb exists, hidden beneath the very stones of Jerusalem. For these believers, the search for Solomon's final resting place is not just an archaeological endeavor, but a quest to unlock the secrets of an ancient world, a world filled with hidden treasures, forgotten wisdom, and knowledge that could reshape our understanding of history. As the centuries have passed, the search for Solomon's tomb has become more than just a search for a physical location. It has become a quest for understanding the man himself. What did his tomb say about his reign? What hidden truths and secrets could it contain? The deeper one looks, the more tantalizing the possibilities become. And yet, despite the wealth of information that has been uncovered about Solomon's reign, his burial place remains a mystery, a riddle that has withstood the passage of time and the relentless march of history. In 2017, a groundbreaking discovery beneath the ancient hills of Jerusalem suddenly thrust the mystery of King Solomon's tomb back into the spotlight. What began as a routine survey of the Silwan hillside, a rugged area to the east of the Old City, turned into one of the most remarkable finds in modern archaeology. The team, led by Dr. Emily Carter, had been tasked with mapping the underground terrain using ground-penetrating radar. As the equipment hummed and swept the slope, something unusual appeared on their monitors. Rather than the expected random voids or cracks typically found in Jerusalem's layered history, the scan revealed a series of straight lines and sharp angles. This was not the irregular pattern of natural formations. It was the unmistakable outline of a deliberately constructed structure. At first, the archaeologists could hardly believe what they were seeing. Jerusalem, with its complex mix of ancient and modern layers, has long been a city of hidden tunnels, cisterns, and aqueducts. The water systems that once served the city's inhabitants were well known, as were the secret passageways used by various conquerors and kings over the millennia. Yet, this was different. The geometry of the passageways beneath Silwan was too precise, too purposeful. This was not simply a network of aqueducts or cisterns. It seemed to be a carefully designed system with a specific intent. It appeared that someone had gone to great lengths to ensure these tunnels remained hidden from prying eyes, possibly for thousands of years. The discovery was remarkable not just for the precision of the tunnels, but for the unusual features that set them apart from other structures in the city. Some of the tunnels led to dead ends, abruptly stopping against walls of solid stone. Others veered off at odd angles, looping back on themselves in what appeared to be an intricate maze. These features were not the result of careless construction or the passage of time. They were too deliberate. They seemed designed to confuse anyone who might stumble upon them, to throw off any intruders who might dare to explore further. These were decoys, a clever system of misdirection to ensure that the true purpose of the structure remained concealed. The more Dr. Carter and her team delved into the tunnels, the stranger the findings became. Some sections of the passages were unstable, intentionally so, with signs suggesting that the walls could collapse at the slightest disturbance. Other areas showed evidence of traps, loose stones and unstable flooring designed to collapse when someone ventured too far inside. The evidence seemed to suggest that whoever built these tunnels had foreseen the possibility of intruders and had planned accordingly. The structures were not just functional, they were defensive, intended to protect whatever lay hidden in the depths below. It was then that the team made a discovery that would forever alter the course of their investigation. Just outside one of the first chambers they explored, faint markings appeared on the walls of the tunnel, obscured by the runoff of centuries of rain and dirt. As they carefully cleaned away the layers of grime, what emerged was a series of Hebrew symbols, scratches etched into the stone with precise care. The markings were not random, they seemed to follow a deliberate pattern. 7 distinct lines, each with 7 symbols, appeared on the stone. The number 7, significant in biblical tradition, immediately stood out to Dr. Carter. The connection to Solomon's temple, which was said to have taken 7 years to construct, was not lost on her. This was no mere decoration. These symbols seemed to convey instructions, perhaps even a code, meant to protect the site from intrusion. The discovery of these markings raised more questions than it answered. What did they mean? Who had left them? And most importantly, what were they protecting? Dr. Carter's team had already unearthed a tunnel system that appeared to be part of a far larger and more complex structure, but the markings hinted at something deeper. This was not just a network of passageways. It seemed to be a safeguard, a barrier designed to keep whatever lay at the end of the tunnels hidden from the outside world. The question was no longer whether Solomon's tomb existed, but whether this was the very structure that had been designed to keep it concealed for all these years. As the team moved deeper into the tunnels, they began to uncover further evidence of the site's intended secrecy. More carvings appeared, and the layout of the tunnels grew ever more complex. The walls of the tunnels began to show signs of deliberate reinforcement, with stones carefully placed in positions to ensure the stability of the passages. Some sections of the tunnels were lined with smooth stone, while others featured rough-hewn surfaces, as though the builders had worked with a mix of practical and symbolic intent. It was clear that this was not an ordinary construction project. Whoever had created this network had done so with a level of sophistication that was extraordinary for the time. However, the complexity of the site came with its own set of challenges. The Silwan hillside, with its fragile limestone and unstable terrain, was not a forgiving environment. Excavations had to proceed slowly and cautiously, as any disturbance to the rock could result in a collapse. Added to this were the political sensitivities surrounding the area. Jerusalem has long been a city of intense religious and cultural significance, and the discovery of an ancient site like this in such a contested area was bound to raise tensions. Dr. Carter's team had to navigate not only the physical dangers of the site but also the political minefield that surrounded their work. The discovery had already attracted attention from various religious and political groups. For centuries, Jerusalem's Temple Mount had been the focus of religious tensions, with both Jews and Muslims claiming ownership of the sacred site. The excavation of the Silwan hillside, with its potential connection to Solomon, threatened to reignite old disputes over access to the city's most cherished landmarks. In the face of these challenges, Dr. Carter and her team remained focused on the task at hand, carefully recording their findings and ensuring that their work proceeded with as much transparency as possible. The markings on the walls of the tunnel system were not the only clue suggesting the importance of the site. As the team ventured deeper, they began to notice other signs that hinted at the tomb's possible location. Sections of the walls were covered in dust and debris, but as they cleaned away the layers, they uncovered what appeared to be inscriptions. The script was unmistakable. ancient Hebrew, carved with the same precision as the markings they had already discovered. These inscriptions, though weathered and faded, seemed to tell a story. They were not simply decorative symbols, they appeared to be instructions, perhaps a guide to the tomb's location, or a set of warnings to keep intruders at bay. The nature of the inscriptions was intriguing. Some appeared to be straightforward, simple phrases that might have been used to identify the site. Others were more cryptic, offering only fragments of sentences that seemed to carry a deeper meaning. The team was able to piece together several phrases that hinted at something more significant: the path of the wise, the seal of the king, and the final resting place. These words sent a chill down the spine of the archaeologists working at the site. Were these inscriptions referring to Solomon's tomb, or were they warnings, meant to deter anyone who sought to uncover the secrets hidden beneath the earth? As the team continued to investigate the tunnels, they began to uncover more evidence that suggested the tomb of Solomon might indeed lie within the labyrinth of passages they had discovered. The markings, the inscriptions, the strange design of the tunnels, they all pointed to something extraordinary buried beneath the hillside. And as they ventured further into the heart of the site, it seemed that they were getting closer to uncovering the tomb that had eluded so many for centuries. After the initial discovery of the tunnel system beneath Silwan, Dr. Emily Carter and her team focused their efforts on uncovering the next layer of the mystery that surrounded the supposed tomb of King Solomon. The evidence they had found, precise tunnel structures, strange symbols, and Hebrew inscriptions, had only intensified the intrigue, but the real breakthrough came when they stumbled upon something far more significant: a stone slab that appeared to be sealed and immovable, a barrier that separated them from what lay deeper within the tunnels. The team had already uncovered a series of unusual features within the structure. The tunnels seemed deliberately designed to mislead anyone attempting to navigate them. They had uncovered false passages and chambers, some of which had collapsed or ended abruptly, all suggesting that whoever had constructed this system had anticipated that intruders might come across it, and taken precautions to prevent discovery. The markings they had found earlier on the walls of the tunnels, with their Hebrew symbols and repetitive patterns, seemed to confirm that this was no ordinary construction. But the stone slab, tightly sealed and seemingly impenetrable, raised the stakes. This was no longer just an excavation, it was a race against time to uncover a tomb that had remained hidden for thousands of years. The slab was not just a physical obstacle, it was a psychological one as well. The team could feel the weight of history pressing down on them as they examined the stone. To most, it appeared to be just another part of the rocky hillside, a jagged, immovable feature of the natural landscape. But to Dr. Carter, it represented something far more significant. It was a barrier, intentionally placed to seal away whatever lay beyond. She and her team believed that this was a door, not simply to a tomb, but to the final resting place of one of the most legendary figures in history, King Solomon. As they studied the stone, Dr. Carter and her colleagues noticed that it was not just an ordinary piece of rock. The slab was tightly fitted into the tunnel, leaving no gaps or seams that could be easily pried open. It had been carefully crafted to resist any intrusion. Surrounding the stone were faint markings, weathered by centuries of exposure but still visible under the light of their flashlights. Some of the carvings appeared to be decorative, but others seemed deliberate, perhaps part of an ancient system of codes or instructions. The symbols looked like they might have been created to guide or protect whoever would eventually uncover the tomb. The markings hinted at something far beyond mere decoration. They were part of a complex design meant to preserve and protect whatever lay on the other side. The next step in the team's work was to figure out how to open the slab without causing any damage to the surrounding structure. The team knew that this was no simple task. The passageways and chambers they had uncovered so far were already unstable in places, and disturbing the stone could trigger a collapse that would bury the site forever. The challenge was not only technical, but also intellectual. The builders of this tomb had been sophisticated in their approach. They had anticipated the day when their creation would be uncovered, and they had designed a system of protection that could withstand the ravages of time. Dr. Carter and her team began by using advanced technology to study the slab. Laser scanners and 3D models were employed to map every detail of the stone's surface. They used high-resolution imaging to reveal any subtle markings or grooves that might provide a clue as to how the stone could be opened. The more they examined it, the more they realized that this was not a simple slab of rock, but a key part of an elaborate defense system. It was designed to keep out intruders, but it was also a carefully calculated puzzle, requiring both precision and patience to solve. For weeks, the team worked tirelessly, using every tool at their disposal to examine the stone. They measured, mapped, and remapped every inch of the slab. Dr. Carter herself spent long hours studying ancient texts, hoping to find a reference that might provide a clue as to how the stone could be. There were rumors and legends that spoke of hidden mechanisms in ancient tombs, devices that could only be triggered by knowledge or wisdom. Could this be one of those mechanisms? Dr. Carter couldn't help but think that the key to unlocking the tomb might lie not just in brute force, but in understanding the mind of the builder, in deciphering the language of the stone. Finally, after weeks of careful work, the team made a breakthrough. They discovered a faint groove along the top of the slab, barely visible to the naked eye. It was an almost imperceptible indentation, but it was enough to suggest that there was a way to move the stone. The groove seemed to correspond with the markings they had found earlier in the tunnels, the ones that appeared to be instructions or codes. Was this groove the mechanism that would open the tomb? It was a tantalizing possibility, but one that required caution. If they were wrong, the consequences could be disastrous. With great care, Dr. Carter and her team began to apply pressure to the stone, gently tapping it with precision tools. The first few attempts yielded no results. The stone remained firmly in place, unmoving and unyielding. But the team was undeterred. They had come too far to give up now. They tried again, this time applying more force, working in tandem to ensure that every movement was calculated. Slowly the slab began to shift. At first it was just a small movement, a slight tremor that sent a ripple through the surrounding rock. But it was enough. The stone had moved, and the tomb was now within their reach. When the slab finally gave way, the team was hit with a rush of stale air, the first breath of fresh air the chamber had felt in centuries. It was a moment of triumph, but also one of awe. They had cracked open a piece of history that had been sealed away for millennia. As the team pushed the stone aside, they revealed what lay beyond a chamber, dark and still, yet filled with the unmistakable weight of ancient secrets. The air inside the chamber was thick with dust, but as their flashlights cut through the darkness, the team saw something extraordinary: vessels of gold, carefully arranged along the walls, their surfaces gleaming faintly in the dim light. The first glimpse of treasure, it seemed, had been uncovered. The discovery of these gold artifacts was nothing short of astounding. Golden bowls, intricately carved with Hebrew inscriptions, stood in rows along the chamber's walls. A menorah, identical in shape to those described in the Bible, stood tall in one corner. The scene was like something out of an ancient ritual, with spices and perfumes still preserved in jars, their scents lingering in the air after centuries of confinement. This was no ordinary tomb. It was a site of extraordinary wealth and significance, a place that seemed to hold the very essence of Solomon's reign. But it wasn't just the treasure that caught the team's attention, it was the carvings on the walls of the chamber. As they examined the stone surfaces more closely, they saw that the inscriptions were not just decorative. They were instructions, symbols that seemed to hold a deeper meaning. Some of the carvings resembled geometric patterns, while others seemed to represent celestial alignments, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of mathematics and astronomy. These were not the markings of an ordinary tomb. They were the writings of someone who understood the profound power of knowledge and wisdom. As the team continued to explore the chamber, they uncovered more inscriptions, each one more puzzling and intriguing than the last. One carving stood out above the rest, a star, sharp and deliberate, etched into the northern wall. This symbol, later identified as the Seal of Solomon, was known in legend as a mark of immense power, a symbol capable of commanding spirits and controlling knowledge too dangerous for ordinary men to possess. To find this symbol, etched into the walls of the tomb, was a discovery that left even the most experienced archaeologists in awe. The treasure was remarkable, the inscriptions profound, but the most astonishing discovery was yet to come. Hidden in a corner of the chamber, partially obscured by layers of dust, the team found a small, ornate chest. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than another piece of treasure, but as the team carefully examined it, they realized that it held something far more significant. Inside the chest, buried beneath a layer of fine dust, was a ring, large, heavy, and inscribed with a symbol. The symbol, when examined closely, was identified as the Seal of Solomon, the same symbol they had seen carved into the walls of the chamber. The ring, with its ancient inscriptions, was a discovery of unparalleled significance. It seemed to confirm the identity of the tomb's occupant, but it also raised more questions. Could this be Solomon's personal seal, the same one that legend said gave him dominion over spirits? Or was it something else, a symbol of power and wisdom that had been passed down through generations? As the team held the ring in their hands, they knew that they had uncovered something truly extraordinary, something that would change the course of history. The discovery of the golden artifacts, the Hebrew inscriptions, and the intricate geometric patterns etched into the chamber's walls had left the team in awe. The chamber, with its well-preserved treasures, felt like a time capsule, a place where the past still lingered, waiting to reveal its secrets. But despite all the material wealth and symbolic power contained within the tomb, the greatest mystery still remained: the absence of Solomon's body. As the team continued their exploration, they focused on the chest they had discovered earlier. It was an object that had immediately caught their attention due to its unusual appearance and the weight of its presence. Buried under layers of dust and detritus, it had been easy to overlook at first. However, as they carefully examined it, they realized that the chest might hold the answer to the biggest question of all: the location of Solomon's remains. Opening the chest was no simple task. Despite the apparent fragility of the surroundings, the team proceeded with caution. They had already witnessed the dangers of disturbing ancient structures, false passages, collapsing tunnels, and the ever-present risk of triggering a cave-in. The chest, however, proved to be surprisingly resistant to even the most delicate efforts to open it. It was a reminder that whoever had constructed this tomb had gone to great lengths to ensure that it would remain undisturbed. It was as though the builders had anticipated that one day, people would come searching for Solomon, and they had placed barriers in their path, making sure that only those who understood the ancient codes would be able to access the secrets within. After what seemed like hours of careful work, the team succeeded in opening the chest. What they found inside was unlike anything they had expected. It was not simply another treasure, but a small, heavy ring, thick and ornate, yet crude in its craftsmanship. The ring bore the unmistakable emblem of the Seal of Solomon, the very same symbol that had appeared on the walls of the chamber and on the golden vessels they had uncovered earlier. It was a discovery that sent a ripple of excitement through the team as they realized that they had found something of immense historical and symbolic significance. The ring, with its ancient inscriptions, was not just a piece of jewelry. It was a key, a symbol of Solomon's power and authority. For centuries, legends had spoken of a ring that gave its wearer dominion over spirits, a ring that held the power to control the elements, command armies, and influence the very fabric of reality itself. Was this the same ring? Could this be Solomon's personal seal, the very artifact that had granted him the power he was said to possess? It was a tantalizing possibility, one that added yet another layer to the mystery of the tomb. But even as they marveled at the ring, the team couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that the tomb was not just a physical structure, but a psychological one as well. It was as though the tomb itself had been designed to test the minds of those who would eventually discover it. The carvings, the inscriptions, the false passages, all of it seemed to be a carefully constructed puzzle, one that had been waiting thousands of years to be solved. But why? What was the purpose of all these barriers? Was Solomon's tomb meant to be a place of eternal rest, or was it something more? These were the questions that continued to haunt Dr. Carter and her team as they stood in the chamber, surrounded by the echoes of a long-dead king. The presence of the ring, however, raised another question. If this was Solomon's tomb, then where was his body? The chamber was filled with artifacts and symbols, all pointing to Solomon's reign, but there was no sign of his remains. Had they been removed, or had they simply never been placed there in the first place? The absence of the body was a puzzle that had confounded archaeologists and historians for centuries. Many had speculated that Solomon's tomb might lie somewhere beneath the Temple Mount, hidden away by ancient priests, or that it had been lost during the Babylonian conquest. But no one had ever found definitive evidence of its location. Now, in this chamber beneath Silwan, it seemed as though the tomb of Solomon had been uncovered, but the king himself remained elusive. Despite this, the team pressed on. They knew that they had uncovered something extraordinary, something that would change the course of history. The chest, the ring, the inscriptions, they were all part of a greater story, one that had been waiting to be told for thousands of years. And yet, as they carefully cataloged each item, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were only scratching the surface. The chamber seemed to hold more secrets, more questions than answers. As they continued to explore, they noticed something else, something that had been hidden from view until now. Behind the chest, partially obscured by layers of dust, was another set of markings, etched into the stone wall. These markings were different from the others they had found. They were not geometric patterns or celestial alignments, but a series of Hebrew words, carved with a precision that suggested they had been placed there with great care. The words were difficult to decipher at first, but as they cleaned the stone, the team began to make out a message. The words read, "May wisdom guide my hand as stars guide sailors." It was a simple phrase, yet one that resonated deeply with the team. The style of the inscription matched the language of the Bible, and its tone was unmistakably Solomon's. It was as though the king himself had spoken across the millennia, leaving behind a message for those who would one day uncover his tomb. The discovery of this inscription was a turning point for the team. It was not just a record of Solomon's wisdom, but a direct link to the man himself. The inscription seemed to confirm that this was indeed Solomon's tomb, and that he had left behind not just material wealth, but a message, one that had endured through the centuries, waiting to be uncovered by those who could understand it. But as they pondered the meaning of the words, they were struck by a deeper question. If Solomon had left behind this message, then what other secrets had he hidden away? What had he known? And what had he wanted to keep from the world? The team knew that they had only begun to uncover the true extent of Solomon's legacy. The chest, the ring, the inscription, they were just pieces of a much larger puzzle. But even as they uncovered these treasures, they were confronted with a deeper mystery. What had happened to Solomon's body? Why had it never been found? The absence of the body raised troubling questions about the nature of the tomb and its purpose. Was this truly a burial site, or was it something else? A place of hidden knowledge, a sanctuary for wisdom too dangerous to be revealed. The questions seemed to multiply with each new discovery, and the answers remained as elusive as ever. The discovery of the inscription, however, sparked a renewed sense of determination in the team. They knew that they were on the brink of something truly groundbreaking, and they were not about to let the mystery slip away. With each new piece of evidence, they were getting closer to understanding the truth. The tomb was more than just a resting place for a king. It was a symbol of Solomon's power, his wisdom, and his enduring legacy.